The Judicial Service Commission has failed to recommend a minimum of 4 candidates for the Constitutional Court post for President Cyril Ramaphosa to appoint 1. This week's candidate list included law professor David Biltchitz, advocate Dodson, and Supreme Court of Appeal senior judges Ashton, Schippers and Tati, Makgoka. The post has been vacant since 2021. Now, joining us to discuss this further is Mbekezeli Benjamin, Judges Matter Research and Advocacy Officer. Good afternoon, Mbekezeli. What an interesting turn of events. Just this Sunday, ahead of the interviews, many were lauding the 50-50 candidate composition of judges and non-judges for the ConCourt post, and now they've failed to recommend the minimum of 4. Your views on this?
Good evening, Mfundo, and good evening to the viewers. We are a little bit disappointed to see that after such an impressive shortlist of candidates, the JSC was not able to appoint or recommend the appointment of any of them. Partly the reason for this is because there were just too few candidates. One of the 5 withdrew due to personal reasons last week already. So the JSC went ahead on Monday and Tuesday with only the minimum of 4 candidates. That meant that those candidates, if any one of them was not suitable for appointment, then the whole process couldn't proceed and had to restart from scratch. And for us, it not only was a waste of resources to spend 2 days interviewing candidates, but it does speak to the broader perceptions that candidates have of the JSC, because this is one of the most prestigious jobs not only in South Africa, but in the world. And one would have expected hundreds of candidates to want to make themselves available. The fact that we couldn't get even the bare minimum to do so is really telling about our appointment system.
What exactly does it tell us? Because I know that for the years that have passed, many have criticized the manner in which some of the candidates were interviewed. Some of them felt a bit embarrassed to a certain extent. It seems that they tried to address the issues around the line of questioning over the years, but still there seems to be no appetite among some to actually come forward for these positions. What does it tell us exactly?
Well, it tells us 2 things, one of which that even though the JSC has undertaken reforms to improve the process, for example, there weren't any clear written criteria with clear guidelines of what exactly the JSC is looking for when it interviews candidates. That has been fixed. But of course, the perceptions that are there, that candidates have, that when they come before the JSC, they will not be treated with disrespect. They will leave with their reputation and dignity in tatters. That has discouraged candidates from making themselves forward. So it is still a perceptions issue that the JSC needs to fix. And I can confidently say that this week's interviews have helped in improving the perceptions, because from what we saw from this week, the JSC was really focused on the qualities that the different candidates have. They were focused on the experiences. There wasn't a lot of the politics that we often see at the JSC, and that for us is good. But of course, we will look to see on the next round whether candidates will be confident enough to believe that the JSC has changed for the better, and they will want to come forward for appointment.
I want us to look at some of those interviews, particularly that of law professor David Biltchitz's performance, because his took up most of the day. He's never practiced before. He's a celebrated law professor who started acting in the ConCourt just in February. And it was noted that he's still to deliver a judgment. Your views on his interview, because there was a lot of back and forth around his inexperience, so to say.
Look, I think we need to first give a little bit of context, in the sense that academics have previously been appointed to the Constitutional Court. In fact, 3 of the founding justices of the Constitutional Court were non-judges. 3 or 4 members of the Constitutional Court were non-judges at the point at which they were appointed. There have been law professors that have been appointed since, like Justice van der Westhuizen was a law professor before he was appointed to the Constitutional Court. And in fact, the Constitution itself requires only 4 of the 11 justices of the Constitutional Court to have been judges prior to their appointment to the court. So that is the most important context we must remember. So the job of the JSC is to actually check whether the candidate is suitable for appointment to the Constitutional Court, regardless of whether or not they are a judge. So that is something that we need to keep in mind. So when it comes to the interview of Professor Biltchitz, yes, he comes with a lot of academic experience. He's quite prominent globally in the field of human rights and constitutional law. And so that interview did take up all of Monday. In fact, not just all of Monday was on that one interview. And they gave him a tough time on his judicial experience. They also gave him a tough time, to be fair, on the JSC, on some of his judicial philosophy and some of the ideas that he has about the law, which is important. But what the JSC should have done, they should have looked at his experience and whether or not it fits in the Constitutional Court, and not look at whether his experience compared to those who are judges compares. That's not what the JSC should have done.
But you sometimes have legal practitioners that would go and say that if you're going to even be an acting judge in the apex court, for them as legal practitioners, they also feel that you need to also get a bit of experience on the other side and litigate, that you need to come to the apex court and be a litigant as well, to have some sort of a fuller experience, similar to, again, what EFF leader Julius Malema was stating there. So you're of the view that it's really insignificant. If you're a non-judge and you get to act in the apex court, it's enough of experience.
No, I'm not saying that a judicial experience is insignificant. It is obviously important, and it is valuable that candidates have judicial experience. But what I'm saying is the Constitution itself, which is the overriding document that must guide this process, the Constitution does not require anyone to have judicial experience prior to them being appointed to the Constitutional Court. And so that is the most important starting point. And in any event, and this is, I think, where it is important, the Constitutional Court operates differently from any other court in the system. The Constitutional Court is supposed to answer the big question on the meaning and interpretation of the Constitution. It is supposed to give guidance on vast areas of the law. And so having judicial experience obviously gives you an advantage, but having other experience working alongside those who do have judicial experience does benefit the court overall. Because when the Constitutional Court is answering these big questions, at certain point, they will be giving answers that have not yet been in the law. So academics have that advantage in that day in, day out, they theorize about the law. Principles that have not yet been developed, they work on developing those principles. So academics do have value to add to the Constitutional Court. The question for the JSC is, how do we bring in all of these experiences in order to benefit the Constitutional Court?